Y'all, Erin Patterson has taken Australia by such storm, she's even got graffiti being done in her honor, okay? Check it out. Now look, we're almost at the end of this crazy mushroom case, and we're gonna start reviewing some of those closing arguments in today's video.
Hey, 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 welcome to the Sofa Squad, sipping from the cup at hey.
Now hold on everybody, let's do a quick sofa sidebar now. Keep in mind, ain't no cop, ain't no doctor, ain't no lawyer, ain't no therapist, ain't none of that fancy credentialed stuff, okay? Only credentials we got up in here is my sass, and this sofa. Now keep in mind also, I'm just giving my opinions on very public information, so do your own research, come to your own opinions, and drop them off in the comment section. And while you're down there, if you do like what you see here at the Sofa Squad, drop a little like, drop a little comment, drop a little share. It helps the channel out immensely. Now let's get edition. Hello Sofa Squad and welcome back to the sofa. This is a sofa and this is a Paul. If you are new to the channel, my name is Paul. If you're not new to the channel, guess what? My name is still Paul. Okay, so we are going to be talking about the closing arguments today. I'm going to put a bunch of stuff up on the screen here, some resources, Guardian, ABC News, all these people who are doing all the talking, all the going to the courtrooms and seeing this in person and whatnot. You can check out their daily podcast, Daily Mushroom Podcast, all these great resources, right? This has been such a wild ride, if you will, especially all of the wonderful things that I've learned about Australia, the people, how the law in general and justice works there. And we're going to see it play out here in the coming days with what takes place with Erin, obviously. So that being said, it's been very fun talking and meeting everybody from down under, okay? And especially you down under. I do appreciate all of your help that you have provided me. So y'all, like I said, we're going to just jump into it, okay? Closing arguments went on forever. Can you imagine, right? Lori Daybell, any of those? So let's just go ahead and get into it. Let's talk about Nanette Rogers. So Nanette Rogers began giving her closing arguments on Monday, June 16th, and concluded shortly before the court's lunch break the following day. Okay, can you imagine Lori Daybell up there doing that? Now, her summary and whatnot of the case started by reiterating to the jury that Erin Patterson, all alone, nobody else, had total control over the meal that she chose to cook for all of the guests, right, on that horrible day in July. Now, she also reminded them that the autonomy that she had over the meal was, I'll quote her, exercised with devastating effect. Now, she did also cite about Patterson's choice to use individual servings of beef Wellingtons. This was doing the whole thing, she said, giving the appearance of sharing in the same meal, while she obviously, allegedly, was making sure that she didn't get any of the laced beef Wellington with the obviously laced with the death cap mushrooms, okay? Now, Rogers also told the jury that the heart of the prosecution's case rests on 4 alleged deceptions, which include, I'm going to put them on the screen here, I'll read through them, you can read with me or just listen along. So number 1, the fabricated cancer claim that Ms. Patterson told her guests when she invited them to the meal. Number 2, the lethal doses of poison that Dr. Rogers says she secreted in the home-cooked beef Wellingtons. Number 3, the illness that Ms. Patterson pretended to have after lunch to make it seem as though she also suffered from death cap poisoning. Number 4, the sustained cover-up Ms. Patterson embarked on to conceal the truth after the lunch. Now then Dr. Rogers will go into the deception part of this case, right? She'll tell the jury, you know what, remember there was a whole ruse for getting this whole lunch together. She wants to thank them, show off a garden, talk about, some health stuff, all these different things going on. And then she tells the jury the evidence, I'm quoting her, the evidence surrounding the lunch invitation shows that Patterson fabricated her cancer claim to create a reason for her otherwise unusual meal. Now, she also said that Patterson gave her estranged husband, remember Simon, numerous reasons, to come to the lunch. She painted, a picture of a gathering which was not just going to be a social get-together, but also family business, serious stuff, right? So Rogers then goes in and outlines the evidence that was presented in the children's statements. She affirmed that it was always her plan that the children would not attend the lunch for obvious reasons, right? Now, Erin also made sure, she says, that they would not be there by the time the guests started arriving. She says this was deliberate and calculated and basically ensuring that there's no chance that they would be home during the luncheon and would therefore be unharmed, just get away from the poisonous lunch she was about to serve, She was trying to look out for them in that way at least, but in a very twisted way, I guess. Now, Dr. Rogers would also remind the jurors of Ian Wilkinson's earlier testimony that Erin announced her cancer diagnosis after lunch. And then Nanette Rogers, she encourages the jurors to otherwise reject her claim that she only told them she may need cancer treatment. And Nanette Rogers will say, this is just Erin trying to basically minimize the lies that she was telling her guests, right? So then Nanette Rogers points to messages between her and Gail, so Erin and Gail, when they were like discussing these medical appointments and all this type of stuff. And she was like, this is a clear indication that the lie was planted weeks before the lunch ever took place. Now, she also reminds them that a thorough review of her medical records was performed during the investigation. And it turns up like it's zero evidence, okay, for her having an MRI, a needle biopsy, any of the stuff that she told them. And then Rogers pointedly tells the jurors she not only knew how to tell convincing lies when it came to like the cancer or whatnot, because she had put in the research. She made bald-faced lies, Nanette says, to her in-laws about her medical appointments and tests. She says that Erin Patterson thought her lies would die with them. Now, Nanette Rogers also affirms the recipe which Patterson's claims that she used. Nanette Rogers is like, it didn't call for multiple individual pasties or whatever, right? She did not prepare a shared dish where each guest had a slice from a single beef Wellington. Now, Erin deviated, she says, so significantly from an already unfamiliar recipe to ensure she did not become unwell from the meal. Now, here's the thing too. So I was looking up like restaurants. If you were on my live chat with me, I was like, let's go look up locally. Like if I wanted to go get a beef Wellington. Well, number one, they're only at the super fancy restaurants, right? I called McDonald's. They said maybe next week on the dollar menu, but not anytime soon. Right? So, but I was looking it up and it's like, yeah, this is a very tricky dish to make. So the fact that she made these separately is now like a red flag to me where I'm like, yeah, why would you do that? It would be one thing, like say Erin was known for this dish. They're like, oh yeah, oh her beef Wellington and her mushrooms are good. You know what I'm saying? But it's like, no, this is like a new thing, right? So why would you make it the most difficult way possible? Well, because you're trying to kill everybody. I mean, that could be one answer, but of course we don't know that yet. It's all alleged at this point in time of the recording. Now, Rogers will talk about the mushroom purchases. And she'll say, yeah, like a week prior to the luncheon, Erin purchased more than enough mushrooms. And she also stated, Nanette stated, I'll quote her, there was absolutely no need to add an entire packet of dried mushrooms. Now, Rogers also states the death cap mushrooms in the meal were prepared differently from the button mushrooms, which were chopped. They were likely prepared in a way to become unidentifiable, Rogers says, end quote. It ain't looking good for Erin, right? Now, Rogers will then also revisit the evidence about that website that we've talked about so much, right? iNaturalist. I'll never get that out of my mind at this point. And that's when it showed the death cat, the toxic fungi, all that, right? And that it was glowing in Lock and Ultram in the months before the lunch took place. Okay. Nanette Rogers also says that one of the web pages that Erin allegedly visited showed a world map marking sightings of death cat mushrooms. And she'll say Erin didn't look at other types of mushrooms or peruse any other areas of the website. She went directly to the death cat mushrooms. Now, Rogers also said you can safely infer it was the accused making these searches because at the very same time, the user Googled Currumbura Middle Pub and put in a food order. And you have seen from the records of this order that it was placed under Patterson's name. Okay, this part right here for me is giving Alex Cox getting a burner phone and checking Gmail from it, right? It's just like, and this is, and I'm going to do a sofa sidebar here because I'll forget this and I won't remember to make this comment. So we're just going to go ahead and do it now. This is one of the things with this case. There's so many aspects of like, what was she thinking? And it makes you wonder, like, was this so pre-planned that she knew what she was doing? Or for the iNaturalist thing, was it like, she's like this, like, pretending I'm fun. Wait a minute, okay, yeah, death cap mushrooms. Wait a minute, I've got an idea. You see what I'm saying? Did the idea and the plan come together along the way? And along the way, she cooks this, no pun intended, she cooks this up? Or was it completely like, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to take him out with death cap mushrooms. I'll find this website where I can go do it. But you see what I'm going with that? I feel like it's a bit of both. I feel like she would get an idea and then simmer on it. The amount of cooking references that I say, legitimately, no pun intended, is very interesting. I've never noticed this until this case, right? For obvious reasons. Anyways, let's keep going. So then Rogers moves the topic over to the phone location and data, all that kind of stuff. And she says, quote, while the telecommunications expert, Dr. Matthew Sorrell, was only able to conclude that there was a possible visit to Locke on April 18th, 2023, you, meaning the jury, should consider this evidence in conjunction with other evidence, including the fact that Patterson purchased a dehydrator on the same day. Okay, I mean, come on. And the evidence that Patterson's phone was stationary in the Altram area for a period of about 25 minutes on May 22nd, 2023 should not be discounted. And she says, visiting these areas was not something that Erin normally did. Now, from a jury standpoint, because one of the ways that I look at this is like, if I was a juror, right? Obviously, we have a little bit more privy information on a lot of these cases, especially the American ones where we have like access to the motions and things like that. But this is an aspect that I would heavily look at, because if I was on the jury, right, and I'm sitting here and I'm like, okay, so yeah, if she doesn't normally go doing this, why was she out here doing this? Why did she just look up death cap mushrooms and then run out here and do this and it was not normal? Again, for me, if I was a juror, and if Erin only talked about, oh my God, I had taken up foraging like a year ago, and I was like learning plants and stuff like this, and I finally got the confidence to work my way up to mushrooms. I was going to these places, and I was sitting here and doing this and doing that. I guess I either mixed them up or got the wrong ones or something. You see where I'm going with this? Way more plausible, right? And again, that's where I come back, like if I was a juror and sitting here thinking like, okay, and I know that they'll say, and we'll get to this, oh, you don't have to have a reason or a motive or anything like that, whatever. But as a juror, I'm sitting here thinking that because to me, that's big. Now, I also understand that people do worse for less, right? I mean, come on, let's be honest, right? But nonetheless, something like this, I'm just like, well, I don't understand the why, okay? But again, you don't have to. It's just, did she do it? Well, this kind of stuff right here, I'm like, yeah. You're telling me that we have her phone data and all this kind of stuff in these searches, go on this website, and then she's there. This is not something she normally does. And then she goes and gets a dehydrator. And then people die from death cap poisonings? Really? And we're even questioning this? Okay. Now then, Rogers will also remind the jurors about Ian Wilkinson's credibility and said, and I'm going to quote her, he's a compelling witness whose testimony they could confidently accept, as he was able to recall a substantial number of details about the lunch. Now, Nanette Rogers will also refer to Erin's use of those two colored plates to serve everything up, and she'll say that this was striking evidence of her forethought, as this would ensure Erin could unmistakably identify the sole non-poisonous meal. Now then, Rogers will go back to Simon's testimony, okay? Remember Simon, the strange husband. But this is the testimony that Heather Wilkinson mentioned the odd plates twice the day after. And then Nanette further stresses the importance of this evidence, right? I mean, and I get that, okay? Now, before she wraps up that whole subject or whatever, Rogers then asks the jurors to reject Erin Patterson's evidence that she served the lunch on a series of mismatched plates and that she just happened to eat from a different colored plate, as Mr. Wilkinson testified to the fact that Erin picked up and carried off the different plate to her seat. Now, let's talk about the different color plates for a second. So, one thing, this is very normal, especially depending on your decor or whatever, even if you're not like somebody who decorates, to have different plates, okay? It's not like that striking. But pretend you're somebody who decorates, it is a very normal thing to have mismatched kind of plates that work together. But however, this sounds like more obvious, oh, she's eating on these two different ones. All the trappings are there for it to be And the fact that she mentioned that, Heather mentioned that a couple of times, I'm just like, is she out of plates? Or that was odd. Now, I don't know what type folks they are. I don't know if they're if they're of the echelon of being oh, it was a total scandal. Oh yeah, I went to Doreen's luncheon the other day. She had mismatched plates. Yes, I know. And I was so embarrassed for her. Might as well have pulled out paper plates, okay? Ooh. Yeah, we're not going back there again. I don't know if it was that vibe, okay, or if it was just that was weird, but the fact that it stuck out, she mentioned it twice, okay, there's that. Also, I'm a guy, and so I don't that kind of stuff when it strikes me. I'm ooh, I just use a plastic plate. You know what I'm saying? I feel like people who pay more attention to making things elevated and, pretty and presentable and things of that nature, they're going to notice that more than being oh yeah, here's my old rag car. You can use that to wipe yourself off there. Yep. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I have all the trappings here. I can barely differentiate colors, colorblind stuff at this point. So it's like, I'd probably be like, they're not the same matching plates. Okay, whatever. Same kind of vibe as like when the dudes, the thing where like the women all wanted to see her pantry. Well, obviously Erin didn't want them to see it because the scene of the crime's in there. Yeah, but she's like, oh, no. It's messy. And the guys were like, yeah, it was whatever. Or Ian said, yeah, we didn't want to, whatever, right? But on the different note, like Ian might have been like, well, hey, let's go check out the garage, or that, just those kind of differences. So the fact that Heather mentioned this to me was significant, because it told me this wasn't like an eclectic mismatch thing going on here. This was like that's weird. Why is her using different plates? So anyways, that's my sofa sidebar on that. Let's keep going. Now then Rogers goes to the other big thing about this, right? And that's Erin's deception about being ill after the luncheon. And then Nanette will like very strongly urge the jury to reject any suggestion that Patterson suffered even a mild version of death cap mushroom poisoning, end quote. Rogers remains very steadfast in the prosecution's belief Erin both, I'll quote her, deliberately and falsely represented to relatives and medical professionals that she was very unwell as a result of the lunch. Now, Rogers will also further note that her sole purpose for doing something like this is because she knew she had not been poisoned. She knew that she was not going to exhibit symptoms of poisoning and knew how suspicious this would look to everyone. That is a huge thing to me, and a huge like, what were you thinking, okay? Now, before they move on from that, then Nanette Rogers also one more time emphasizes like the disparity of the timing. It draws their attention back to Simon's testimony that he's saying that Erin told him she, and I'll quote, became unwell early in the evening on the day of the lunch, end quote. Now, Nanette reminds the jury that, quote, the lunch guest first began reporting symptoms around midnight on the evening of the lunch, end quote. Then Rogers will move on to the events that happened like the day after the whole lunch, okay? She reminds the jury of Erin's son's testimony that Erin was insistent on, and despite her claims of experiencing the diarrhea, all this type of stuff, driving him to that flying lesson that day, right? I mean, come on, that's weird enough in itself. Now, Nanette will also focus in on these discrepancies between her son's testimony and Erin's testimony. She'll ask the jury to recall Erin saying that she pulled over on the highway and relieved herself in a bush, while her son was riding beside her in the front seat. And she'll say that the son never referred to any such stop occurring. Now, also in addition to this, she asked the jury to think about that CCTV footage that showed Erin stopping at a service station during the trip, entering the bathroom for 9 seconds. Now, she'll sit here and she'll say, the level of improbability of Erin's version, if she entered the bathroom to dispose of tissues that she used to clean herself up, this is what Erin said that she did during her testimony, it would take more than 9 seconds of cleaning herself up, or at a minimum to wash her hands, if she indeed had gone to the bathroom on the roadside. I mean, just think about this, right? That's another huge thing. I personally think that this was just an alibi thing. Now, Rogers will also ask the jury to consider Erin's first trip to Leongatha Hospital. Remember, this is the Monday morning following the luncheon. This is where she was told, okay, she goes in there, and I'm going to quote him, there is a risk of death cap mushroom poisoning. Nanette will say that, basically, this is the time that Erin realizes, oh no, I'm going to be found out, right? Here we go. So she discharges herself against the medical advice, right? Because essentially at this point, it's like this is either blowing up way beyond what she thought it was going to, or it's what she wanted but realized she forgot to cover tracks. I don't know, right? This is the part that it's like, what did you think was going to happen, okay? But regardless, this is where she's probably in Nanette saying that Erin's just like, oh, wait, okay, I'm basically going to get called. So yeah, you know what? I'm probably going to die here in a few minutes, but guess what? I need to go out and do a few things. Now, Nanette will say that Patterson runs home to figure out how she was going to manage the situation. Now, Rogers will say that just that part of the evidence right there demonstrates that she knew she hadn't consumed those death cap mushrooms, okay? And we talked about this in the live chat. Again, before we even get to the part about, hey, your kids might be sick, right? Just before we even get, because that's a place, right? People are deathly ill at a meal that you ate. You go to the hospital, they're like, oh my God, there's death cap mushroom poisoning. You ate the same meal. We've got to get you in there. You're talking about, I got to go run some errands. I'd be putting IV in and be like, come on, what do we got to do? What do we got to do? Make me throw up? Give me the charcoal. Whatever, right? Okay, so let's keep going. Now, then the lead prosecutor will come take over, right? And they'll walk the jury through Erin's most likely movements after she left that hospital where she checked herself out against medical advice. And they said, I'm going to quote, in the 1 hour and 38 minutes that she was gone, Dr. Webster called her 3 times and all of the calls went to voicemail. Her claims of taking care of the animals and packing her daughter's ballet bag does not account for the entire time that she was away. And this differed from Simon's testimony that she went home and lay on the floor. Rogers sternly told the jury, we say Erin Patterson's accounts are not truthful. It simply makes no sense the accused would go home and lay down, especially after having been informed that she was exposed to a potentially lethal poison, end quote. And again, just think about, it doesn't even make sense. Why would you go home and lay on the floor, right? This doesn't make sense. And I know at this point she's trying to say, I got nervous, I did this. However, it still doesn't make sense, because even if if you're like, oh, it was a mistake or whatever, you would be on the assumption that you were going to get sick too, right? Unless you absolutely knew you weren't going to get sick because you were in control of the meal, like they're saying. But anyways, let's keep going. Now on this one, go ahead, brace yourself, Sofa Squad, because we are going to go back over to the bowel chart, okay? So I'm sorry to say, it is what it is, right? Now, Rogers then reminds the jury that Erin told Nurse Sepson that the movements, remember her bowel movements, whatever, looked like urine, but were stools, okay? But then there was the test result, and I'll quote her, they detected no viral or bacterial pathogens, so whatever these tool outputs were, they were not caused by eating death cap mushrooms, and her behavior was inconsistent with being sick as she claimed, end quote. Then the prosecutor brings all the attention back to one of the big obvious things, and that's that Erin told multiple people that the children ate the luncheon leftovers, but with the mushrooms scraped off. Rogers will remind the jury that the evidence proves very contrary to this claim, okay? She briefly cites Simon's testimony, the estranged husband, that he told Erin on the next day, Sunday, that his parents were unwell. Yet Erin told one doctor that she didn't go to the hospital on that Sunday because she thought she had a case of food poisoning and had children with her at home, end quote. Now, yes, as we have discussed numerous times, that part is super weird, okay? The timing of all of it, right? Now, what I want to do is I want to put this screenshot up here, okay? This is going to be from the Justin Dustin's live trial blog, ABC Reporter. I'll read through it, or you can read along with me. So here we go. Dr. Rogers asked the jury to consider why Ms. Patterson would have fed the meat component of a meal that could have been a possible source of food poisoning to her children. She also tells the jury that evidence showed the accused was initially reluctant to have her children medically examined. Multiple medical professionals stress the importance of having the children medically assessed numerous times to the accused, she says. She says the jury should reject Ms. Patterson's evidence that she wanted to understand what the concerns were before having her children brought to hospital. Dr. Rogers later highlights the evidence of one medical professional who told the court that Ms. Patterson had insisted she had scraped the mushrooms off the meal when told the children must be assessed. You might think this is an extraordinary response from a mother who by that stage had known for hours that her children required urgent medical assessment, she says. How could she possibly think that the hassle of taking them out of school was a reason to disregard all the medical advice about the risk to their lives? Dr. Rogers tells the jury that there was a perfectly reasonable explanation for why a doting mother might be reluctant to have her children medically assessed after being told they'd potentially eaten a lethal dose of death cap mushrooms. She knew that they had not eaten death cap mushrooms at all, Dr. Rogers says. She says the prosecution asserts that this is another piece of incriminating conduct. Now, let's revisit that timeline, or the time that she was gone, the 98 minutes, okay? The prosecution's still talking about that. And Rogers will remind the jurors that Dr. Matthew Sorrell's digital timeline revealed, quote, Patterson's phone connected to the Altram base station, which indicated she wasn't being truthful about her whereabouts after leaving the hospital earlier that that morning. Now then Rogers asked the jury to keep in mind that her overall vital signs were considered, hey, you're a good girl. No hospital staff reported that she appeared unwell. Everything pretty much seemed normal. Nanette Rogers will say that there's no evidence that she received medication to stop her slow bowel motions. In fact, her reports of diarrhea seemed to subside without medical intervention. And secondly, she did not receive anti-nausea medication until her transfer to the Monash Hospital. End quote. Now, then Rogers will also tell the jurors, hey, do not accept as truth Erin trying to sit here and minimize the amount of beef Wellington that she consumed, okay? Nanette Rogers is like, you need to keep in mind this to the jurors. Erin never told a medical professional that she had vomited after lunch, despite testifying that she threw up after binge eating 2/3 of an orange cake in the hours following the luncheon. We submit if the accused had truly vomited, that is a detail she would have shared with the medical staff, end quote. Now, Nanette will say that when looking at all of the evidence, that it's very apparent that the accused was not suffering from any illness. She certainly wasn't sick with death cap mushroom poisoning. Pretending to be sick is incriminating conduct. Secondly, it is inexplicable why only 4 of 5 people who supposedly ate the same meal fell ill, and only one person, the person who prepared the meal, did not become ill, end quote. Okay. Now, as the first day of the prosecution's closing, they start to wind down all that. Now, Rogers assessed the 4th deception that she mentioned at the beginning of that list that we went over, and that was Erin's engaging in a cover-up to conceal the truth, and where she lied and acted deceptively to deflect blame about what she did, and included these 4 parts: lying about feeding her children leftovers of the beef Wellington the day after the lunch with the mushrooms and pastry scraped off, lying about all the mushrooms coming from Woolworths and an Asian grocer, disposing of the food dehydrator used to dehydrate the death cap mushrooms, deliberately concealing her usual mobile phone from police. Now, Rogers would say that the whole evidence about the kids eating the leftovers, well, that only came from one source, right? Obviously, who do you think? Erin. And when the kids testified, that they were basically like just repeating what, they had been told by Erin. So, like, yeah, you can't really go on that. Now, then Rogers will move on to like the $1 million question, like, where did these mushrooms come from, right? She'll circle back to the whole thing with the medical staff and how, they're trying to find out where these come from, where these come from. We were trying to figure out how to treat these people, so on and so forth. Now, also on that being said, Rogers is like, don't forget her story about the Asian grocer kept changing, okay? Despite what she claimed during testimony, Nanette will say, Erin Patterson was not only slow to respond to the inquiries of officials from the Department of Health, but she was also often untruthful during their investigation into where the mushrooms were sourced, end quote. Now, Rogers will say that the evidence clearly suggests that these death cap mushrooms are highly unlikely to appear on store shelves. And then Rogers will cite the testimony of Dr. Camille Truong, who decisively stated, quote, "It is impossible for death cap mushrooms to be bought from a shop as they cannot be cultivated," end quote. Now, Rogers will continue on talking about, we've heard so many times about, the various places that she claims to have purchased these mushrooms. But she'll say that it wasn't until the testimony of that health department official, Sally Ann Atkinson, that the jury learned about this whole Asian shop thing that she was talking about. Now, she'll say that 6 hours after her conversation with Atkinson, so after Erin and Atkinson spoke, she spoke to Katrina Cripps, the child protection worker, and never mentioned these locations. Rogers will say that obviously Erin's story about getting these mushrooms from this grocery store, the Asian grocery store, is absolutely not true. Now, Rogers will also talk about when Erin's on the stand and she's like, look, she can remember all this stuff, right? Dates and this and that and, the deaths and the evidence, but she can't remember the Asian grocer where she got the mushrooms from, right? Seriously? Yeah, we're not buying it, she says. And she'll also remind everybody, she's like, she kept telling that lie knowing that she had remnants of the dry death cap mushrooms in the dehydrator. Now, then day closes out, we get the second day, right? Erin starts off, she comes in hot, y'all. She's like, in no uncertain terms, she's like, look, Erin wanted to hide evidence, okay, period. This was why she went to that transfer station, the landfill, where she got rid of the dehydrator, because she knew it would incriminate her. She knew that keeping it would be far too risky, Rogers said. Now, then Rogers will turn to the evidence about, oh my gosh, the mobile phones, right? She reminds the jury that phone A, per the prosecution, that this was her usual mobile phone. Now, she'll say that it was used from February 2023 until after the luncheon and was still in use when police were searching Patterson's house 1 week after the deadly lunch. Now, she'll also go on to say that, quote, the agreed fact that at some point during the span of 1 hour and 45 minutes on this same day in August 2023, the number used for phone A lost connection with the network. And then Rogers will offer 3 different reasons why this might have occurred. So number 1, the SIM card being removed. Number 2, the battery being removed without the handset being off. And number 3, the handset being damaged. Now Rogers will say it doesn't matter which of those 3 things. For one of those to occur, someone had to be handling the phone. Okay, cough, cough, Erin, right? And she'll remind the jury, remember, we never found said phone either. Now then Rogers will talk about the other phone, phone B, that she gave, meaning Erin, the police. And she's like, that was nothing more than a dummy phone. Okay, period, end of story. There was a SIM card that had only been inserted 2 days prior to her home being searched. Now Rogers iterates that she lied about her phone number in the police interview. Then Rogers will remind the jury about the moves that Erin was making during the whole phone game, right? She'll bring up the whole thing about all those factory resets. She'll say that using a dummy phone and claiming she had a different phone number was designed to frustrate the police investigation. She says that this was completely done so that the cops are never going to see what was inside that phone, right? Now, of course, Rogers will say she knows why the only reason to do this is because whatever was in phone A was going to implicate Erin in the deaths of all of her lunch guests, aka family. Now then Rogers kind of gets like a little preemptive thing going. She's like, okay, look, I can go ahead and tell you what that defense is going to say, okay? They're going to get there talking about Erin was innocently foraging for wild mushrooms and she accidentally picked these up. It was a family tragedy, right? Those are my words, not hers, and just about every other defendant's in this point in time, right? Then she asked a rhetorical question for the jury. Was the accused really a mushroom forager between 2020 and 2023 as she claimed to you? Rogers then will declare the only evidence on this topic comes from Patterson's own evidence. None of the immediate family members you heard from in this trial knew the accused to pick or eat wild mushrooms, and it should not be dismissed that her 2 children were unaware of her foraging despite living with her during this period. And then Rogers continues by stating it should also not be discounted that Patterson never discussed foraging for mushrooms with her online friends, even though they talked about absolutely everything. And Rogers will say, Erin Patterson deliberately sought out death caps. She knew exactly what she was looking for and targeted her search accordingly. Rogers also warns the juror. She says, you will likely hear the defense argue that Erin had a good relationship with her guest, but you've heard evidence that Patterson's relationship with the in-laws Don and Gail, it wasn't always that great, she says. And she'll cite the dispute over Simon's child support payments as an example of that. And then she'll bring up and say Erin's real feelings came out with some of those text messages with her online friends. Now, Rogers will then tell the jury they need to rebuff innocent explanations from the defense about significant things, running from the hospital, being reluctant to give the kids medical help, dumping the dehydrator, all the absolutely insane things that took place. And then also Rogers will talk about the whole thing where, Erin's like, oh, I'm panicking, bad. And she'll say, look, no, this does not explain all of the efforts, all of the actions, everything that she did to cover up what she had done. That is not an excuse. Don't pay attention to it. And she brings up that, like, look, even when like this was going down, whatever, this was an accident, she continued to lie and to cover it up when she could be helping them. And then to me, a huge, wonderful ending note that Rogers did is she kind of goes down this like rhetorical questioning again, and she'll ask the jury, she'll be like, imagine what you would do if you were told the meal that you cooked and served your family contained death cap mushrooms. She says, I don't think you would go into self-preservation mode, be reluctant to receive medical treatment, or take 2.5 hours to eventually agree to get your kids to be medically assessed. Rogers says it's quite the contrary. You would do everything you could to help the people you love. You would tell the treating medical practitioners every little bit of information. End quote. And she'll also talk about how there's, and I'll quote her, there's no need to know why someone did something to know that they did it. After all, the question is not why she did this. What you must determine is, have we, the prosecution, determined beyond reasonable doubt that the accused did this deliberately? And then Rogers will remind the jury she told lies upon lies because she knew the truth would implicate her. So let's wrap this up here with that. We'll talk about the defense closing in a separate one or whatever, because at this point it's going to take them, I forget how many days the judge said to go over like jury rules and, you know, all the stuff that they do at the very end. It's going to be next week, depending on when you see this. So at this stage in the game, again, I mean, I don't know if you've been following me on the podcast channel, but over there we come in doing polls and stuff. I think that she knew what she was doing. My only question is this is, and again, it doesn't matter, like the prosecution said, it's the motive. Did she want them dead or did she want them just really sick? I think Erin was trying to get attention. Well, I think she was trying to do a lot of things. I think she was trying to get even. I think she was trying to reject people before she was rejected. I think she was trying to get attention. I think she was thinking with her emotions while doing this, which is why it's sloppy, right? That's why it doesn't make sense, because it wouldn't ever make sense. So I'm going to be very curious to see how long the deliberations are once we get there. But for now, let's pause here. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. If you don't mind, pretty please, I do appreciate it. While you're down there, if you could drop off some little sofas for myself, Rosco and Spirit, who's behind me, Bo and Luke, and you, the Sofa Squad, so we can sit and talk about Erin Patterson, Tiffany Slate, and Lori Daba, all the things we talk about here at the Sofa Squad. And until we gather down in the comment section to do all that, I'll see y'all soon.
I just wanted to say thank you again for watching the whole video, and also thank you for being part of the Sofa Squad. Special thanks to all the Patreon members, channel members from both of my channels, everybody who likes, shares, subscribes, comments in the comment sections. It helps the channel out so much. Now don't forget, I do have that other channel, the podcast channel. That's where we go live, we hang out, we talk. We have kind of sort of a schedule, but just be sure and check it out. I'll put it up here on the screen. And then, like I said in the beginning of the video, if you want to follow me and Rosco on the Instagram, go on, check it out. It's right here on the screen again. But once again, thank you very much. I really appreciate you being part of the Sofa Squad, and I'll see you in the next video.
Hey, welcome to the Sofa Squad, sipping from the cup that, hey, come laugh with the Sofa Squad. Can't roll my damn eyes hard enough.